Welcome back to Simply Holistic. Dr. Tony here. We're going to talk a little bit more about estrogen in the GI tract. This time I'm going to attempt to, instead of diving deep into each area, I'm going to attempt to touch on a few areas. This first one is peptic ulcers. Peptic ulcers include both gastric and duodenal ulcers, and complications include upper GI bleeding, which means you'll see it in your stool, possibly in your vomit, GI perforation, and gastric outlet obstruction. Peptic ulcer disease is a multifactorial and complex digestive disease. Pathogenesis is unclear. The protective factors include, gastric protective factors include mucus, endogenous bicarbonate, stuff that your body's doing internally to help protect its lining, prostaglandins, antioxidants, whereas pepsin, gastric acid, bile acids, and endogenous oxidant agents are recognized as risk factors that can cause damage to the stomach. With that said, pepsin is needed in the stomach to break food down for your digestion. Okay, so the GI bleeding, perforation, gastric outlet obstruction. If there's an obstruction, it's blocking the way of something. That is what an obstruction is. It's blocking the way of something. So either your food is not going through properly and not digesting all the way through your digestive tract, or maybe it's not coming out the other end. Well, obviously, it's not coming out the other end. If it's not going through all the way, getting digested, it's not coming out the other end. The GI bleeding kind of goes without saying. You see GI when you go to the bathroom, or CGI, you see the bleeding when you go to the bathroom. The GI perforation. For me, this is as bad as the obstruction, because if it's obstructed, it means that your body tissue is actually obstructing it. There's a growth in your body tissue that is blocking the path, at least partially, so that food or whatever can't properly get through. I know that you have the peristalsis that is moving the muscular action that's moving everything along, but if there's an obstruction, even with that muscular movement forward, if there's an obstruction, if the body tissue is growing outward to block the path, even with that muscular movement forward, when you hit that obstruction, there's only so much the intestine can do, or the esophagus can do. So we've got that, the gastric outlet obstruction, or the GI perforation. Imagine, and this does happen, the internal lining of your body tissue. It's supposed to be solid and supposed to have the hair-like structures that grabs everything as it goes along. Imagine that solid internal tissue is cut. That's perforation. It's cut. Inside you, it's cut. It's supposed to be protected against this, but imagine that it's cut. You know how a cut on your skin. You know how a cut on your skin feels. You're going to see it bleeding. It's going to hurt. You're going to be worried that something gets in it and infects it. There's no difference internally. It's going to be bleeding. It's going to hurt. You got something going there. It's going to hurt. Because you have food and drink going across this cut, falling into this cut, very, very, very high likelihood that you're going to develop an infection, because you have foreign agents going into tissue where it's not prepared to take that. The food and the drink would be the foreign agents going into the tissue before the foreign agents have been broken down, so therefore the tissue is not prepared to accept the foreign agents. There's been no adequate digestion. The food and drink's just going, oh, there's a cut here. Okay, let's go in. So it's going to hurt. You're going to really, really risk infection, internal infection. Here's the thing about that. Our blood tests in this office, our blood tests will reveal that infection. They do. They reveal if your body has an internal infection that it's fighting. And I can look at something like this. Acid secretion and pH values, they will change. Okay. Therefore, estrogen exhibits a protective effect from peptic ulcers. See, gastric cancer, a malignant tumor, and the 5th highest incidence, 3rd highest mortality rates in the world. Studies have suggested the prevalence of gastric cancer is higher in men than women. However, the differences become negligible when compared with postmenopausal women. Okay. The expression of estrogen receptor alpha and estrogen receptor beta in gastric cancer has been previously demonstrated. Hypothesized that ER serve as an important role in the occurrence and development of gastric cancer. Therefore, investigating the roles and mechanisms of estrogen receptors and may highlight potential mechanisms to improve management of the disease. Next, estrogen and estrogen receptors in intestinal diseases. IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. Irritable bowel syndrome is one of the most common GI disorders. How many of you are raising your hands right now saying, yep, true, amen? It is typically characterized by disorderly bowel movements and chronic abdominal pain. Based on studies, irritable bowel syndrome is, again, this time it's the other way, is more prevalent in women than men, with a ratio range of 2 to 4 to 1. This corralling of the numbers, I agree with. Okay, IBS more prevalent in women than men, highlighting the possibility of the involvement of estrogen serving a role in IBS. Okay. So now, because you have more estrogen, irritable bowel syndrome. That's what they're saying here. IBS symptoms were determined to be associated with hormonal status. Well, everything's associated with hormonal status. Come on, everything is. No offense against you, because you're not controlling your hormones. You're not getting up every day, okay, I'm going to make this hormone this level. You're not doing that. Okay. IBS symptoms were determined to be associated with hormonal status. Every other symptom is. It's hormonal. And the role of sex steroid hormones in the pathophysiology of IBS is gaining increasing attention. Oh, really? Okay. Studies have demonstrated that estrogen, I started to say participates in modulating visceral sensitivity and regulating motor and sensory functions in IBS animal models. Regulating motor and sensory functions. Estrogen modulates sensitivity and regulates motor and sense functions in irritable bowel syndrome. Additionally, the study determined the estrogen receptor engagement in the IBS subtypes, constipation predominant IBS and diarrhea predominant IBS. So you could have either. The authors analyzed whether estrogen signaling was accompanied by alterations in the expression of pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory cytokines and microRNAs, which regulate genes associated with the immune response. They're not telling us much here. Both ER alpha and GPER expression were upregulated in IBS. There was a correlation between the expressions of GPER in patients with IBS-D and the severity of abdominal pain, and an association between GPER-mediated estrogenic effects of IBS and the activation of mast cells in the colon, thus highlighting a novel avenue for understanding the pathogenesis of sex differences in IBS. Did you get all that? So according to this excerpt, your higher estrogen is causing you to have irritable bowel. Now, inflammatory bowel disease. IBD is an yeah, it is intense. Intestinal inflammatory disease, which is incompletely understood. Which is incompletely understood. Well, isn't pretty much everything medically? There is a lack of clear understanding of the pathogenesis of IBD and established effective treatments. Previously, patients with IBD were diagnosed primarily in North America and Europe. As lifestyle, environment, and diets of individuals has changed over time, the prevalence of it has increased worldwide, particularly in children and adult populations. Well, doesn't that include everyone? IBD includes both ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. The differences in cancer risk between male and female were evaluated for patients with IBD, and the results showed that IBD conferred a higher risk of developing colorectal cancer in males compared to females. Colitis is hypothesized to be associated with the development of IBD, colitis, prior to IBD. Okay. What are the odds? How many of you, I know I said what are the odds, and I was thinking what are the chances, but it's not the right phrasing here. How many of you are battling against IBD or IBS? Irritable bowel or inflammatory? Either way, you have irritation. I mean, either way. What's the big difference between the two? Either way, you have irritation. The internal tissue is not right. Either way, we need to treat what's going on with your colon and heal the colon. Either way. You're going to have acid in there that's eating up tissue. You're going to have, as we mentioned earlier in the same study, you're going to have either tissue that's coming out of your digestive tract and forming a blockage. Here's the digestive tract. Here's the tissue growing out of it, forming the blockage. Or you're going to have a perforation like you get on your skin, solid skin, and then you perforate it, you cut it, and have a perforation inside. Then and then internal infection, which, as I said, our blood tests actually reveal if there is an internal infection. It reveals this. That is on the standard panel that you get when you first come into our office. So, how many of you are battling some kind of colon issue? Constipation, diarrhea, whatever it might be. Your digestive tract, you know that your digestive tract is not right. How many of you are battling this? And ladies specifically, could this be tied to your current level of estrogen? Could it be? Well, medically speaking, yes, it could be. Therefore, within the initial session, or from the initial session, because we're not going to do it here within, anyway, outsource that. From the initial session, we're going to test your level of estrogen. That's part of the numbers that we look at. So we are looking from our initial session with you. We are looking at the health of your liver, the health of your kidneys, whether you have an internal infection, what your level of inflammation is, internal inflammation, so internal infection, internal inflammation, looking at your thyroid. We're going to look at your full hormonal panel. So we're going to see where your estrogen is, along with your progesterone and testosterone. I was trying to mix those two words together for some reason. LH, FSH, we're going to see that too. We are going to see where your hormones are, your sex steroid hormones, and your female reproductive hormones, where they are. Are you in menopause? You have PCOS going on, we're going to see indicators of both of those. We're going to see all this stuff, but then your initial testing, the initial. So we're going to have that baseline for you, and we can monitor as we go along. We're going to see all these things in your initial testing. So if you are battling something to do with your colon, if your bowels are not working as they should be, which is sad to say, very. I wanted to say sad to say very common, which is true, because it's sad to say it is very common these days. It is very common. It's far too common. That's what I really want to say. It's far too common. I mean, nobody should really, technically, nobody should be dealing with bowels that aren't working right. Nobody should. So it's far too common today. Are you battling that battle? Could your estrogen be involved, be contributing to it? We will do the initial testing to find that out. Okay. Colon cancer. Told you, I wanted to highlight or touch on a few different sections this time. Colon cancer is one of the most common types of malignant tumor of the GI tract. The second leading cause of cancer-associated death worldwide. A study of colon cancer prevalence found that females exhibited a higher prevalence of colon cancer. However, women aged 18 to 44 with colon cancer had an improved prognosis compared with men the same age and women greater than 50 years. So if you're younger or middle-aged and you find out you got colon cancer, more likely you're going to survive. Well, I mean, that's going to be the case with anything when treated appropriately, though. Upregulated expression of ER beta 1 in colon cancer is associated with an improved survival outcome, more estrogen. Similarly, downregulated estrogen is associated with a poor survival outcome. And again, this doesn't mean that we want to send you into estrogen dominance, estrogen overdrive. No, that's not the goal either. Numerous studies have demonstrated that hormone replacement therapy, HRT, in postmenopausal women did not serve a protective role. Oh, okay, that's what you're saying. Contradicting previous studies. Remember what I said about determining why studies contradict each other. Who's paid for it? How was the study structured? What was the outcome? What did whoever was controlling the study, what did they want? What did they want the outcome to be? Contradicting previous studies. The Women's Health Initiative showed that the prevalence of colon cancer decreased by 30% following treatment with HRT. The Women's Health Initiative, that sentence alone testifies to this. The Women's Health Initiative may sound noble, but they are obviously a pharmaceutical arm. They are wanting to push pharmaceuticals. Women's Health Initiative showed that the prevalence of colon cancer decreased by 30% following treatment with HRT in postmenopausal women. HRT is a pharmaceutical tactic. This group, therefore, did a study to show, check out, we had a 30% decrease. 30%! That's huge, by the way. Decrease. They are there to push the pharmaceutical approach. Interestingly, another study found that estrogen receptors, alpha and GPER, are activated by 17-beta E2 under anoxic conditions where beta expression was reduced, absent in patients with colon cancer, and E2-related gene was inhibited in anoxic conditions through GPER signaling. Forgive me, don't ask me to translate that on this video. Those are some twists and turns there. Okay, E2 treatment reinforced hypoxia-associated migration and proliferation of colon cancer cells, whereas in an aerobic environment, Think cardio, treadmill, elliptical, running, walking. Aerobic environment, cell migration and proliferation. And I know somebody's going to say, dude, doctor, it doesn't mean that you're doing the cardio and it's leading to this. The internal environment. If you're weightlifting, the internal environment, the cells are going to respond one way. If you're doing cardio, the internal environment, the cells are going to respond another way. That's just how it is. So, to make that relatable, so I said aerobic environment. That's what it is. Cell migration and proliferation were decreased by E2 treatment. So estrogen increased the estrogen, decreased this other, the colon cancer. The effects of E2 on cellular responses in an aerobic environment and those conditions were mediated by GPER. Therefore, in order to fully protect the estrogenic response in patients with colon cancer, it is necessary to understand not only the status of the estrogen receptor expression in tumor cells, but also the aerobic and anoxic conditions of the local tumor microenvironment. Makes sense. You need to know the conditions going on around the tumor itself, because here's the logical thing about that. The local internal body conditions going on around the tumor itself are actually what dictated the tumor to begin growing anyway, to begin with. It is. The local conditions around where the tumor is are specifically what dictated the body, your body, to allow the tumor to begin growing to start with. If the local conditions around the tumor weren't that environment that they are, the tumor wouldn't be there. It wouldn't. Conditions in your body have to be a certain way to allow a certain thing to happen in your body. If conditions in your body are dictating homeostasis and everything's good, your body is going to be in homeostasis. If the conditions in your body indicate that the hormonal imbalance is present, a nutrient imbalance is present, some type of imbalance is present, acid-base balance imbalance is present. If the conditions internally in your body are going to dictate that there's an imbalance present, then something's going to happen because the internal environment dictates that that is allowed to happen. Tumors don't happen accidentally. They don't. There is an internal condition or environment or imbalance that allows that to happen. They do not happen accidentally. Let's take this back. Okay, we're talking about GI here right now, but let's take this back to what I've done many videos on, the reproductive system. Ladies, a fibroid doesn't grow accidentally. PCOS, ovarian cysts, do not grow accidentally. Endometriosis does not grow accidentally. What else is there in there? Oh my gosh, there's other conditions. Anyway, no tissue error, can I say it that way? Anybody be offended? No tissue error within your reproductive tract will happen unless there's first a hormonal imbalance. No tissue error in your GI tract will happen if there's not first an imbalance in the environment that allows it to happen. The tumor is not going to grow if everything is good. If everything in your digestive system is good, there can be no tumor. There can be no indigestion. There can be no blockage. There can be no GI bleed, therefore perforation. There can be none. There can be none of these health conditions, IBS, IBD, none of these health conditions can exist if at first everything internally is good. Unless somebody takes a knife, a sharp object from the outside of your body and slices it through internally to create that perforation. But then you know what? Then it's not just internal. Then you have a whole bigger issue. Somebody stabbed you from the outside all the way through your digestive tract. Then there's a whole lot bigger issue than just an internal perforation. Okay? None of this stuff can exist if at first your body has everything in place that it needs, if there's homeostasis in there. The fact that these health conditions exist dictate that something internally is off. How did I get on this soapbox? What was the last thing that I read? Oh, the local tumor and microenvironment. Okay. Let me hit the conclusion. Estrogen is a sex hormone that regulates the development and function of the reproductive systems, and increasing evidence demonstrates the multifaceted nature of its effects of estrogen on non-reproductive organs during physiological and pathophysiological conditions. Understanding the effects of estrogen and estrogen receptor function may provide an important theoretical basis for improving clinical treatments of GI disease. So estrogen is not just about sex. Estrogen affects all, even non-reproductive organs. Estrogen does. Estrogen impacts even non-reproductive organs. So again, we're going to go back to the environment. The internal environment. You need to have the proper internal environment everywhere. Everywhere. You need to have the proper internal environment everywhere. If you don't have the proper internal environment, there's going to be an internal issue somewhere because the internal environment is not proper. Therefore, we, through treatment, have to start manipulating and resetting that internal environment to make it the proper internal environment. That is one aspect of our approach for our treatment to help you regain health. And this is just one aspect of that. What the study has just glossed over with you about estrogen. The estrogen contributes. I have talked many times about the ovarian health, your ovarian health contributing directly to your heart health. Your ovarian health is contributing directly to your heart health. I've talked many times about that. You know that if you've seen those videos. This is saying, and of course the heart health is not reproductive. It's electrical, it's glandular, it's cardiovascular. It's at least those three systems. This is saying that the estrogen goes even beyond that. It affects the estrogen. Your estrogen impacts many organs within your body. And I'm going to say that beyond the organs, the estrogen is going to impact your other glands in your body. I mean, the heart's a gland too, and it's impacting that. The estrogen is going to impact, before somebody says, well, how do you know that? Well, the estrogen is going to impact even the glands in your body. If you have a glandular imbalance, you're going to have it because the estrogen and that works hand in hand too. The lymph. I'm looking over here because we do lymph drainage there. The lymph, the purity and clearing of the lymph is going to affect your estrogen, and the estrogen is going to affect that too. See, we got to work all this stuff together. This is why I hit so many different systems at once, because I want to rein the body in. Not the right approach for everybody. Sometimes we have to do individual at a time, but that's a reason for my approach. With that said, find us at justsimplyholistic.com. Get our intake paperwork, book your appointment, bring it in. Come into our Simply Holistic office. Let's run through our gamut of initial testing. Let's see where you are on everything, see where your numbers are. Let's see what individualized approach you need so we can help you regain your health. We look forward to seeing and serving you soon.